thank you again. Thank you, media, for your patience since this morning when my colleague, the Honourable Anthony Albanese, arrived from Australia. He went straight into Parliament, actually to the Government House, paid respect to the Governor-General, went to Parliament, which has concluded a very fruitful Leaders Dialogue. In fact, this is the fourth PNG-Australia Leadership Dialogue, and it was fruitful, it was very meaningful, especially sitting in a room talking to a leader of a nation that shares very, very close affinity with Papua New Guinea. It was warm, it was mutual, and a meeting that you could expect from a brother or a sister nation. Following our two nations' elections, of course in Papua New Guinea we watched very closely what happened on the other side of Torres Strait. It was Labour and the Honourable Albanese as Prime Minister and in government. On our side, Pangu returned to office, and in government, as I did make mention in Parliament today, this time 50 years ago, it was a Labour Pangu combination that set and paved the way for Papua New Guinea to march towards political independence in 1975. And so today was warm, was cordial, especially as we come to the juncture of PNG-Australia relationship in the time we've been independent, going 48 years now, and to soon reach 58 years of us being politically independent. There were issues that we have to address. More importantly, as I did make mention in my speech, for the younger generations of Australians and Papua New Guineans, lest you forget our shared history. As we march forward into the future, the more we move into the future, the distant 1975 and the 70s will be, the distant 1940s and the events of Kokoda and the World War would be. So it is important at the national leadership level, at the highest, we meet not just Prime Minister to Prime Minister, but more importantly, leaders to leaders, including ministers on both sides and our public service officials on both sides. And this meeting was the highest you could possibly have between PNG and Australia in as far as my memory could recollect. And for today, we came out of a very, very fruitful discussions. In those discussions, our focus remained in how we could entrench our two nations and expand going forward. Key of the issues, we tried to look at what our comprehensive strategic and economic partnership means for us to look deeper, look closer and expand. And for Papua New Guineans, you would have heard Prime Minister Albanese spoke in Parliament today that he'd like to expand. And from where I sit as Prime Minister of your country, I'm satisfied that we are elevating to higher heights in how we relate, especially those areas that concern people to people and business to business, because from government to government there's always been good rapport, good exchanges, good understandings. And if there was any time in which there needs to be a moment where we entrench, well, this is a time we've now set in motion a series of activities that will take place between our officials and Australian officials, between our ministers and Australian ministers, and hopefully in April we will again meet to sign security arrangements and to sign other arrangements that we feel must entrench our PNG-Australia relationships going forward. Today I was pleased to have had Prime Minister Albanese's address to our Parliament. He spoke on issues about continued support in where they have been supporting us, as well as elevating support. Areas like more Papua New Guineans finding educational opportunities in Australia, more Papua New Guineans finding employment opportunities in Australia, whether you just a seasonal worker to go down to Australia and work and come back, or qualified trade or qualified professionals going to find employment also in Australia without compromising our own employment requirements, and upskilling yourself to bring back your skill as well as the dollar back into a country. Those conversations are contemporary, those conversations are timely. He has raised those issues on his own accord, quite complementary to the way I've been focused on PNG-Australia relationship. Most of you would have known when I became Prime Minister in 2019, I could have picked other destinations apart from Australia to make my first visit, but I choose Australia as the first port of call in as far as PNG Prime Minister's bilateral visit is concerned. My visit to Australia signals that Australia is the #1 foreign relationship we have with us, without compromising our other relationships. And today, the gesture of asking Prime Minister Albanese to speak in Parliament also signals in that context. And so we had good meetings, people-to-people relationships, business-to-business relationships, and of course our government-to-government relationships have been anchored. We look forward to our officials working together side by side and to come up with what will be the better version of Albanese, Marape, Pangu, Labour, Australia, PNG for today and going forward as we try to fix this, tidy this relationship for modern PNG Australia going forward into the future. It will be unfair of me not to make mention some words of appreciation to the media today. You've had me in Parliament. I also want to appreciate Australia's help to us since we've been independent the last 47 years, even before that for the missionaries and the KIAPs. Something my brother, I failed to mention, but I'd like to take this time to acknowledge the KIAPs, many young Australians. We talk about the soldiers, but the KIAPs are the forgotten generation. They came and they walked the hinterlands of this country, the islands. We just want to appreciate them before 1975, the imprint of Australians in our country to get us out to the modern world as it was back then. And up to today, the Australian personnel that have come here, the Australian aid and grant that has come here, and lately the direct budget support, as well as interventions in our infrastructure, interventions in many of the programs we're going through, including our budget restoration and budget support. I just want to sincerely appreciate Australia government, people and country for forever being a friend of PNG as it was before, now, and hopefully in our joint understandings, forever friends going and relatives going forward into the future. Mr. Prime Minister, I'd like you to take the media and please fill in on areas where there are fallen short.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prime Minister, and can I thank you for the very warm welcome here in Papua New Guinea, and in particular, I thank you for the extraordinary honour of being the first foreign leader to address the PNG Parliament today. I regard that as one of the great honours of my life, and it is a great honour that you've given Australia, and it says something about the friendship between our two nations. As your close neighbour, it is appropriate that we've been in considerable contact with each other since my election as Prime Minister. We of course met in Suva at the Pacific Island Forum. We sat next to each other at the Prime Minister's 13 men and women's games in Brisbane. We travelled together to Tokyo, and then we had a bilateral meeting and engagement again in Bangkok at the APEC meeting. Today though is a particularly important one, our fourth bilateral leaders meeting, and which was supplemented by a meeting with so many of your senior ministers that certainly we appreciate the respect that the government has given to the Australian delegation that I've brought here today. Today's Annual Leaders Dialogue has strengthened the incredible partnership which our two countries has. A comprehensive partnership of equals, as I spoke about at the Parliament. It's based upon the fact that our economic cooperation and our security cooperation is in both of our interests. Our interests are indivisible. You can't have a more secure Papua New Guinea without a more secure Australia, and vice versa. We have an interest in increasing our trade and our economic relationships, and Australia has a direct interest in supporting the economic development and lifting of living standards here in Papua New Guinea. I'm very pleased that Prime Minister Marape and I have agreed a joint statement of commitment to enter a bilateral security treaty. We've agreed on a concrete timetable going forward that negotiations will be concluded by the end of April, and we hope to have a signing in June, a key outcome of the meeting today. As part of those discussions, we also directly discussed the way that we can provide more cooperation on law and order and policing issues. We've recognised that our work together to build major ports, roads and electrification projects across Papua New Guinea are important, and we will examine potential new trade agreements, including how we can work together to expand PNG's agricultural production, including providing further support for biosecurity issues here in PNG. There are now more than 1,000 Pacific Labour Scheme workers from PNG in Australia, and we support Prime Minister Marape's ambition to deploy some 8,000 workers to Australia. Today we spoke about that being not just in agriculture but in the care sector as well. That is in something that brings benefit to Australia, providing skilled labour and non-skilled labour in areas of need, but it also provides economic assistance to Papua New Guinea as well. I'm pleased that Papua New Guineans will have the opportunity to move with their families to Australia under our new Pacific Engagement Visa. That was a clear commitment that we gave at the federal election, and that commitment is being delivered along with other commitments we made prior to my election in May of last year. We agreed to a reciprocal work and holiday visa arrangement from the 1st of July 2023. Now, apart from economic enhancement, security enhancement, we also have spoken about cultural enhancement between us and just people-to-people engagement as well. Now, one of the areas where that's important is in the area of rugby league. As I told the PNG Parliament when I had the great honour to address it today, I want to see a PNG-based team participate in the NRL, and that's something also that we can work towards. 2025 will be an important date for Papua New Guinea, but it will also be an important date for Australia and the relationship between the party and government that I'm proud to lead and Prime Minister Marape's government. It was tomorrow I will travel to Wewak to pay tribute to Samare and to sit down and to talk in one of the regions of the Papua New Guinea that is so important historically. The leadership and PNG's rise to independence is very important, very important. It's something that since then we've been building the relationship, but I'm very confident that in the next couple of years we will build an even stronger relationship between our two nations. We're happy to take questions.
All right, thank you. We're happy to take questions from anyone. As you would have heard from my brother, the Prime Minister, we outlined what was discussed, but this is work in progress for us as we move forward into a shared future. Any questions from any one of you, please? 4 questions. We could do 5, but 2 from the Australian side of Torres Strait and 2 from Papua New side of Torres Strait. Is that okay?
Prime Minister Albanese, though we appreciate Australia's laws of women's rights and protection for genuine women, when it's come to the media's attention, in this country, through the Office of the Child Protection and Welfare, that many married PNG women are seeking protection visas on the pretext of domestic abuse, and in the process in which the children are made to suffer apart from their husbands and fathers. Are you aware of this issue? And if so, how is your government addressing it?
Well, I will say on the issue of women's participation and leadership, but also equality, I was pleased today that when I addressed the Parliament, the 2 newly elected, relatively newly elected women members of the PNG Parliament were both present. And today as well, we've confirmed a new 5-year program, PNG Women Lead. What that's about is helping Papua New Guinea expand women's leadership and equality That will be particularly important going forward, and I think that we can work through those issues in which Australia can provide further support.
Prime Minister Marape, will the security agreement with Australia to be signed next year necessarily prevent a similar deal between Papua New Guinea and China? Did you give any assurances to Prime Minister Albanese about China developing or having other projects here in PNG?
Those were not issues before us in as far as our discussions are concerned. PNG-China relationship remains PNG-China relationships. Our relationship to Australia remains our PNG-Australia relationship. Our discussions were more centered around PNG-Australia relationships, and at no instance was China or any other nations brought into the picture. Our relationship with Australia is peculiar, unique. Every other nation understands this. We discuss from the context of PNG-Australia purely on that basis.
Prime Minister Albanese, in light of the security treaty that's been worked on between Papua New Guinea and Australia, obviously Burgundy is a security issue. What is Australia's long-term policy strategy for Burgundy's political future through Papua New Guinea? Can it take place in tools to make a decision on Burgundy's political future?
Well, our position hasn't changed on those issues. We say that's a matter for the two parties, and if the two parties come to an agreement, then that is something that we support.
All right, last question. Natalie.
Mr. Alberta and Mr. Albanese.
Are you asking Australian Prime Minister or your Prime Minister?
A question to you both. Someone considers themselves to be the dual.
That's cheeky. That's extending it to 5 questions.
Gentlemen, in terms of the defence treaty, obviously there are regional implications of that. However, PNG does also have a lot of internal security issues and law and order problems. What would this mean in terms of Australia's defence and police roles within PNG?
Well, if I can say that when we speak about our security arrangement, one of the things we've spoken about is increased defence cooperation, including training of personnel. We've spoken about increased in terms of potential for joint operations as well. For other issues, one of things that both of our governments have done recently is establish anti-corruption commissions, both in PNG and in Australia. And I know that people of background in Australia are playing a role there. One of the things that we're talking about with the security arrangement is very much a comprehensive arrangement rather than a narrow one. So that includes a whole range of issues which are security issues, cyber security, domestic security and policing arrangements. The issue of climate change is also a security issue. So this is a very broad agreement recognising that our security interests are intertwined and including by virtue of our geography, decisions taken in one country have an impact in the other. And that's why our security interests, in my view, I said I think in the meeting today, are indivisible. And that's why it makes sense for us to have that breadth of security cooperation across the board.
Yeah, no, we live in a shared region, shared environment, shared ocean. Challenges are quite common, so without compromising the peculiarity of our own bilateral relationship with others, our shared interests will be encapsulated in these security arrangements. But as my brother Prime Minister did indicate, it's not just one narrow focus. It embraces all aspects, the entire gamut of the security matter, including climate change and others that he was indicating. For Papua New Guineans, for instance, we pitched the conversation on visa easy access to visa for Papuans who want to access Australia, but it depends on some of the security arrangements. You have to be a real person to travel into Australia. You must be known by the system here and system in Australia. So there are immense economic value in a shared security apparatus for us and Australia. That is why this conversation is brought without compromising our own peculiar relationship with other nations.
Last question, please. Thank you.
Many of the economic and social issues are businesses. What can you do better than the
Well, I'll answer this question and if my brother could help, but the major focus of our conversations today, and as it has been in the last few years, has been on economic empowerment of our country. You would have heard from Prime Minister Albanese's address to our Parliament today. He wants to buy more producers from us. He wants more Papuans to be educated and work, also find employment in Australia. These conversations are geared towards adding value to the economy and strengthening the economy. It is now a known fact that if PNG is weak, it's a weaker region and an exposure to Australia. So it is in their interest also, as well as our own domestic interest, that the economy is stronger, strengthened going forward. That realization has matured. Under this Labour government and Pangu governments, we are working towards strengthening our country so the economy is pitched higher. Today, the greater conversation was on economy than security and other issues, if I could put it that.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Look, I came to Port Moresby this morning with a positive outlook about the future of Papua New Guinea. And today, this afternoon, my view is even stronger. We live in the fastest growing region of the world in human history. That presents an enormous opportunity for us if we're capable of just seizing it. And today I've met with not just the Prime Minister, but the Treasurer, the Finance Minister, the Trade Minister, and their outlook is one which is one of a common interest that I share. That we need to seize that opportunity, and we seize it by investing in infrastructure and investing in our people. So investing in capital and investing in labour, to put it in those terms. And if we invest in labour, and one of the ways that we can do that is by providing increased training opportunities in Australia for Papua New Guinea citizens, increased opportunities for people to get visas, come to Australia, get skills, commit and make payments back here to PNG that assist with development. If we do that, if we develop industries in ways in which we were talking today about ministers, we're talking about value adding. It was a conversation that could have been had in Australia as well. How we not just export the agricultural produce and other produce which is here and then import it back when greater value is being given, but how do we make the PNG economy more resilient? Now, I'm trying to do that in Australia. Prime Minister Marape is trying to do that in Papua New Guinea. But we have a common interest, both of us, in our nations being successful because we are so linked. And I'm very, very positive about the future here in PNG. This is a great nation which is approaching 50 years of independence, and one in which Australians, hopefully, one of the things that today's about is sending a message to Australian business as well. We want you to invest here. We want you to invest here in your interests, but also in the interests of lifting the living standards of people in PNG. I'm confident that we can do that. I'm more confident than I was even this morning that we can do that together. And we are good friends. We've developed a very positive and open and constructive and trusting relationship. And that is really important as well. And we want that relationship to go beyond just Prime Ministers, to go down to our populations respectively as well. If we do that, I think Australia and Papua New Guinea can be one of the great beneficiaries of the growth that we will see in our region in coming decades. Thanks very much.
All right, very good, very good. We call for a photo opportunity between us and our ministers and our delegations on both sides. Just last one from me to the Australian media, in case you think the Honourable Albanese is wasting time, there are more Australian investors here in this country than anywhere else on the face of the planet. So he's not wasting time, he's also consolidating on all of you Australian investors who are operating in Papua New Guinea.
Thank you.